All right, today we're diving into a song that sits at a really dangerous crossroads. We're talking about music, identity, and the very real world of Mexican drug cartels. The artist's name is El Makabelico, and the big question is he just telling a story, or is he pushing a message that's way, way more dangerous?
So this is the accusation that kicks this whole thing off, taken right from a public denouncement of the guy. I mean, it's blunt, it's powerful, but think about it for a second. Can a musician really be a terrorist? Well, according to his accusers, the answer is a definite yes, especially if their music is acting as propaganda for a deadly cartel.
And that really gets to the core of it, right? When does a song stop being just a song? At what point does it cross a line and become a tool, something that's designed to recruit people, to make violence look cool, and to scare rivals? That's the line we are trying to find today. Now, to get to the bottom of this pretty heavy accusation, we don't actually have to go through his entire musical catalog. The whole controversy really boils down to one single track. Okay, let's get into it. The song is called El Tanque Puentes, and it's a corrido, and that musical style is absolutely key to understanding this whole story. So corridos, they've been around in Mexico for centuries. They're basically folk ballads that tell stories, stories about famous outlaws, revolutionary heroes, big struggles. Think of them like a musical newspaper for everyday people. But in the last few decades, a whole new subgenre popped up, the narco corrido. And these tell the stories of drug traffickers. El Tanque Puentes fits right into that modern tradition. So, to figure out if this song is actually propaganda, let's just treat it like a piece of evidence. We're going to break down the story that El Makabelico tells, almost line by line. And right off the bat, what's so striking is how direct these lyrics are. There is zero subtlety here. The narrator, this guy El Tanque, he flat out states his loyalty. He sings about working in Coahuila, taking his orders from El Señor, the boss, and he even gives shoutouts to places like Laredo and crews like Los 300. He leaves you with absolutely no doubt about who he works for. The song also maps out this personal timeline of violence and loss. El Tanque talks about being arrested during a war back in 2002, doing years in prison, and then this awful personal tragedy of his younger brother being killed. And then a decade later, in 2012, he's right back in the middle of that same war. It just paints this picture of a life that's been completely defined by conflict. But this is where the story gets a lot more complicated, because woven into this whole narrative of cartel war is this really deep, almost tender devotion to his family. He talks about his mother supporting him when he was in prison. He even names his kids, Andy, Emily, Mateo, and his wife, Yesenia. He calls them his treasure, saying they're the entire reason he fights. It's a detail that totally humanizes the guy telling the story. So you've got these two things running side by side, right? Brutal cartel loyalty and this deep family love. How do those even fit together? Well, let's connect this all the way back to that first really stark accusation. And here it is. This is the heart of the whole issue. The denouncement calls the music propaganda for the Cartel Del Noreste. And then boom, right there in the lyrics, the narrator says it himself. The company I'm with has 3 letters, C-D-N. It's basically a confession set to music. Yup, just 3 letters, C-D-N, Cartel Del Noreste. I mean, there's no metaphor, there's no hidden meaning here. He's not trying to be clever. It's not just a lyric, it's practically an advertisement. This is, without a doubt, the single strongest piece of evidence backing up that propaganda claim. And this line tells you everything about how the narrator sees himself. It's so revealing. To his enemies, to the haters, he's an outlaw, like Pancho Villa. But in his own mind, he's righteous. He's got God on his side. It's that classic outlaw mentality, a criminal to the world, but the hero of his own story. So after all that, where does that leave us? Well, we have a song that is, at the exact same time, a personal history that's filled with pain and love, and a very clear billboard for a violent criminal organization. So the conflict is pretty clear. The denouncement sees one thing and one thing only, terrorist propaganda. But the song itself, it paints a much more complicated picture by wrapping that propaganda in a story of personal struggle, family, and a really twisted kind of honor. And this might just be the most important takeaway here. Maybe these two things aren't opposites at all. Maybe the story of family and love and loss,
maybe that's exactly what makes the propaganda so effective. It makes this violent life seem not just exciting, but somehow justified, like it's a noble fight for your own treasure.
And that's really the question at the heart of all this, isn't it? When your life is so tangled up with a violent group, can you ever tell your own story without it also becoming their story? This song lives in that gray area, and it leaves us with a really difficult question about the true power of music. Thanks for watching.